We're going to introduce Keith, and he's going to give us a history of the restoration of Fountain Hill. All right? So,
Thank you.
all right. All right, if everybody could please just silence your cell phones, because mine will go off, I'm sure. Thank you.
And I just want to let you know, if you need some chocolate cake, I've got brownies over here and some punch. So if you're needing a pick-me-up, feel free to go get some. I first want to take just a couple moments to introduce myself and where I came from and how I came to love old houses and things and all that. I was born in Pennsylvania. My parents had an old house there that they restored. It had no water or power when they started in the 1950s. So I was grew up starting with that. We had antiques and things and old stuff. We moved to Ohio, where my father took a job. My mother was a school teacher, and I was raised in a small town west of Columbus. We were taken to antique stores, and close to us there was an Amish antique auction every Friday night. So I was just raised with old and appreciating antiques. I later then moved to South Carolina. My brother was in the Air Force down there, and I moved to South Carolina and started working for the Ruby Tuesday Corporation in management in their restaurants. And then was moved to Savannah. Lived 5 years in downtown Savannah. I lived. So, I mean, if I could go back, that would be one of my choices. But I learned to love the Low Country and the culture of the Low Country. You see, I'm in some funny clothes right here. My brother joined a group during the bicentennial, which was the 2nd Regiment of Charleston. We reenacted a regiment from Charleston, South Carolina. And so I learned about Charleston culture and 18th century at that point. So that added to the loving old and all that history. I then decided I was coming to Lee University as a 10-year older student than the graduating class. So when I arrived, I volunteered with the president's office to help them with events and things, and was introduced to Lou Lemley and Lisa Lemley, and then we formed Ambiance. And so we had started doing weddings and things. We then, and I had some antiques and things, and I sort of got this itch to find a place to put my things. And we had talked to Cynthia and Becky, and Cynthia says, "Oh, go to Niota. There's some old houses up there." So one rainy day, we went up to go see, knowing that Halfburn was there, and so we went to go see it down the road. But as we passed, I saw Fountain Hill up on the hill. Pouring down rain, nasty day. It had a barbed wire fence around the whole thing. It had a cattle gate. It had a cattle crossing. It had trees this big in the driveway. But I just sort of got out, and we walked up there and went and looked at it. The porch was all fallen in. There was no windows, no doors. It just was rack and ruin, leaking everywhere. I was sort of prepared for that, though, because I had been talking to Ernestine Meharry about the Clegg house, it had no windows either, and it was sort of a mess, and it was sort of rack and ruin. So I was sort of prepared to see Fountain Hill. And so we stopped, and Bob Lewis, who is a descendant of the Schultzes here, and the Lanes, he lived on the corner there. And so we stopped and talked to him. He gave us the name of Anne Byrne Hanks, who was the present owner. She and James owned it. Fountain Hill was a playhouse for James. He took everything that he ever could find and put it in the house. There were thousands of bricks up there. After the courthouse burned, he took it up there. And of course, I found the cornerstone of the courthouse as a stepping step out of the house, and have donated, and found it thinking it was a grave marker when I turned it over, but it actually was the cornerstone to the museum, to the courthouse, and have donated it to the museum. But James had lots of things that he had stored in the house. But he had passed, and so the house just sort of sat there. and for 30 years had been vandalized. 4 of the mantles were stolen, the railing of the staircase was stolen, the knoll post was stolen, and vandals had been in there. They had painted on the walls, and I mean, so it was a mess. But we talked to Ann, and at the time she had cancer. She passed of cancer about 2 months after I purchased Fountain Hill from her. But she said, if you will take care of the paperwork and all that, I will sell it to you. So I bought it from her and became a Niotian. So I've been there 27 years or so. Anyway, so that was the start of Fountain Hill. It took a good 5 years or more to sort of put it back together. Everything takes a step, because I had to order windows from the Midwest. The sashes were all broken, so I had to order those and have those put in. I had to tear off the front porch that Mrs. Juliet's mother had put on and go back to the original size of the porch. We had to put a roof on. I had to do, get mantles made. I had to get the staircase put together. So it took a while to be able to go and put everything back in order. Had to paint wallpaper, clean off mildew. I mean, it was a major project. So it took about 5 years before any of that could happen. And made some mistakes along the way. I put beautiful, had recreated the baseboard in the red room, had it recreated, and within a year it mildewed. I mean, there was so much dampness in the walls, it crumbled. So I had to start over, doing treated wood and all that sort of thing. So anyway, it was a process. I put this quote here. It says, "It has been said that it is the best preservation engages in the past, conversation with the present over the concern of the future." So I am so honored to have been selected by our Heavenly Father to have Fountain Hill. Not that I'm the best caretaker, but it may not be there if I hadn't grabbed a hold of it. Let's go to the timeline of when Fountain Hill began. Can anyone tell me the second name of Niota? Mouse Creek, yes. So that was named right after we built the railroad station, and it became Mouse Creek. What was the first name of Niota? Fountain Hill. We have, the Cates were so generous to give us some ledgers, and Fountain Hill was always, in the family, it was always called Fountain Hill, but I never knew why or where the name came from. It has 2 springs on it. It sits up on a hill. But we were given ledgers from the Cate family, and one of the ledgers is a judge that came through in 1830, and this, it says, Fountain Hill, Tennessee. So the name Fountain Hill was established apparently by the Hills, and it was called Fountain Hill up until we then named it Mouse Creek. I have another ledger that says, these are from the store that the Cates had, and this ledger, on one page it says Fountain Hill, Tennessee. You turn the page, and the next page says Mouse Creek, Tennessee. So it's great to be able to have this history preserved here. So we'll start with when the property was established, and it was started with Joab Hill, who married Elizabeth Lane. Now, Isaac Lane fought in the Revolutionary War, and I saw Paul come in. He's related to him.
Yes, sir.
Is anyone else related to Isaac Lane in the group? So he fought in the Revolutionary War and then moved his family down to this area, and this was his son-in-law, Joab Hill, and he married Elizabeth Lane Hill. And they built the log smokehouse, what's left of the log cabin, and a log dock drop barn. And then somewhere in the 1830s or 1820s, they built the first part of the brick house. And it was the back wing, I call it the keeping room, and then the primitive kitchen, and it has 2 little gabled rooms on top of it. And it sat on the hill and then faced down over the hill. Now, whether the bricks were made on the property, I don't know. Whether they were made somewhere else and brought in. They are a red brick. The front wing is brown brick. But this is Mrs. Lane, Miss Lane. Look at her. She must be 90 years old in this, and she's got her 1850s dress on. But I didn't know anything about the Hills. So they left in the 1830s. They sold it to James Hickey, and they left and went west. And they had all these children and all these people who were the Hills out there. So I got online and tried to find them or find out where they went and all that. So that's what these people are Hills. And they had the house from that until 1839. And then Mr. Hickey bought it. Then it was passed to James Wilson. And we first established Niota when Mr. Wilson had it. He sold the spot where the depot is. And he established Niota before it became Niota or Mouse Creek. So of course then we had Mouse Creek Station was established, and so he established that. Then it passes on. Apparently there was no deed and or will, and so Humphrey Lane Schultz bought it from the court in 1853, and his wife was Olivia Lane. They're both related to Isaac Lane too. So she was a daughter, I think, and then he was related to Humphrey Lane also. And then they lived in the house up until, well, they actually lived to here, but they sold it to this granddaughter in 1889. I think I have that deed right here, and she bought it from them or was given it to. She stayed with them and took care of them. But they're in the cemetery, the Wilson Cemetery, and I think the Schultzes died in 1890 something, early in the 20th century. Then it was sold to James Byrne, and then it sat vacant from 1960 to 1997. So it was lost for, 30 years or so, 20-some years, that no one lived in it. Now, tell me who lived there for a while.
Green.
She was no kin, but she sort of lived in the house. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then, the story was, then I came along and have worked on it ever since. So my goal was to put a roof over it, first of all, stabilize the house. I started the Boxwood Gardens when I had no water. I would get buckets of water to water the Boxwood Gardens from the branch. It was sort of primitive, and it still is. I used my outhouse for a long time, and the bushes. I mean, it took almost 5, 6, 7 years to really get it to the point where it was livable and that I was ready to do all the other things. So let's look at some pictures. Any questions on that? On the timeline? Am I right, Paul?
Keith, you are always right. And I appreciate what you do. Hey,
It really made me nervous when Paul walked through the door.
No. You know more about it than I do, Keith. Thank
Well,
you.
it's just, it's a great history. And when I bought the house, I had no idea that it was established right at, right at 1820 and began then. So let me introduce this young lady. This is Miss Juliet Thompson. This is her when she was a child, and she was the woman who contacted me to say, I am the last living descendant who lived in the house. And she said, I want you to come to Sweetwater. Her husband was a postman up there, and it was her mother who had the house. They sold it, and she left with everything from the house. So she invited me up to Sweetwater. She said, I want to show you everything. So I walk in, and she has a little Cape Cod house and little foyer. It had the beautiful red cranberry light fixture that came out of the house hanging there. You walk in the front parlor with the grand piano, the silver candlesticks on the mantle, the Victorian chairs here, and all that, and the porcelains and things. So I was like, wow. She showed me the corner cupboards that came out of the house. They had a pie safe that came out of the house. So we became fast friends, except for the fact that she had two nieces from her husband that were like two Siamese twins who hated me and wanted me nothing to do with Miss Juliet. She didn't want, they wanted to keep all this for the auction that they were going to have or whatever. So anyway, Miss Juliet, I brought her to the house the first time, and she cried, of course, because she saw it the way, when we started. But you can see that was that was her upstairs talking about something. That was the bedroom she was born in. And that was a picture of the dining room of the Thanksgiving. So she got to see the house finished. She got to come and be entertained. I entertained the nieces many times, but anyway. So she would sneak me in the house when she knew they weren't coming up there. She would give me things, paperwork and things, because she wanted me to have it, because she knew that it would not be saved with them. She sold me some, and when I talked to her about what I wanted for the house, I said, I want the old stuff. I want the oldest things. Now, I didn't get a corner cupboard or the pie safe, but I did get something. These two chairs came out of the house. These were the Schultzes. And then this coverlet. Miss Juliet says, I have some coverlets that my grandmother made. That's Mrs. Schultz. That's Humphrey Lane Schultz. And she said, I'd like to give you one. And so I said, well, great, okay. So we went upstairs and we got into a closet, and she had all these coverlets and quilts in grain sacks. And she says, what color would you like? She had navy, green, walnut, the dark color. She had, and this was a red. I said, well, I'd love to have the red one. Then she had all these quilts and things. So these were things that Mrs. Schultz made on the property. And these are some of the glaze pieces that came from the property. They did not have a sugar chest. I guess we were too poor. But anyway, but this was the original sugar bucket from the family, the Schultz family. And so I was able to acquire some great things, and I have as much paperwork as I could have, and that I was able to acquire, and things. So, and as we worked on the project with Josh, we have tried to buy as many of the family things as possible. He purchased a good dozen pieces, a Jackson press, a beautiful marble table, and a few other things. Because I said to him, I said, Josh, once this sale is done, you won't see any of this anymore. It's gone. So, he was able to get portraits of the family. Now the Gettys go back to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The great-great-grandfather, he has a side picture of that is that is sort of a silhouette that the family gave him. They gave him a picture of the son, and then the grandson, who built the Geddes house on Woodward Avenue. And then an oil painting of the daughter that lived in the house. So they've been very gracious, and he went to Mary's funeral on Saturday, and they came to see the house and what projects that we were working on. And they said, I think we'll have some more paperwork to give you. So he is doing all the right things to gain and preserve these things. So for those of us who have old houses, we love them, but they're not easy, right? One has been moved, and Lisa Long, she and her husband thought, well, we almost have this put back together, you know? I mean, it was pretty much in rack and ruin. And then the tornado comes through, you know, and takes a column and jams it through the top of the house, took off the corner bedroom, went through the staircase. I mean, those, you know, it's sometimes hard to keep on going, right, Lisa? So, and we never have enough time or money to make it happen, but we keep working on it. So that was Miss Juliet. This is how the front of the house looks now. Miss Juliet's mother had put a porch that came and wrapped around the side in the 20s sometime, but this was the original size of the porch. Originally when I put it back, I just put a railing up here because that's what the Schultzes had, but within a year all this had been damaged, so I came back and put a roof over it, which is more protective to the whole porch. So this, if you look at the front of the property, this would have had a barbed wire fence around it. And then I put a brick entrance coming in on this end of it. So, coming in the front entrance, this is what it looked like. It had no railing, the spindles were gone. This is mildew that I'm spraying to kill before we could even put the first layer of paint or wallpaper in here. It took a long time to get my railing in and build 3 mantles. There was a man named Don Price here in town. Does anyone remember him? Great craftsman. He built 3 of my mantles. He built more spindles, and then built the staircase, the railing, put it in there. He could not figure out how to turn it, so mine comes up to posts and then turns and turns. A very kind thing was done to me. There was a woman who had been on the property with all the other hundreds of people that had been there to get whatever, and she found the knoll post in the yard. And she just picked it up. When I went to put the house back together and restore it, she brought the knoll post to me and said, I found this in the yard and I want to give it back to you. So God has been good to be gracious with some things like that also. Whoops, back. So this is the red room. It's 18 by 18. The ceilings are 9 foot in the house. And this was the red room when I started. The floor had fallen out. That's my daddy and my nephew and I standing on the floor of the red room ground. So anyway, we sort of come a long way. The red room's been through, I had thought I could just paint the plaster walls. No, it all bubbled up. So it actually has insulation and then drywall on it. So it gives me a little more insulation. But that would have been the most formal room in the house. It's to the left as you come in, and it's 18 by 18. It would have had the piano and, you know, the little sort of formal sitting room. This is the blue room. This is the room to the right, and this was what those walls look like. I originally papered those walls. Again, too much dampness. Had to take the paper down, put insulation, put drywall, and it's actually painted now with a border. And then you go through the doorway of the primitive the blue room into what's called the keeping room. And this is the original mantle, and was the living room, sitting room, whatever else for the Hills. When they lived there, that would have been their living room. There's a little staircase that goes up to the upstairs, and then there's one like that I've rebuilt into the primitive kitchen. But the front door would have been here. So what they did is they took the back wing and just added the 2/2 on the front. Fountain Hill's not a big house. It's just 2/2 on the front and 3 or 4 rooms in the back. It's not like Lisa's Long, big, huge mansion with a spiral staircase. And anyway, but we're so proud of you. And this is the dining room, and I sort of created this, even though I think it was a dining room at one point. This is what it looked like when I started, and I put French doors and a Palladium window here. This is closed off, and then there's a window here into the kitchen. This is the primitive kitchen, and this is what it looked like. They did in the 1950s or 60s put in a sink and refrigerator and all that. So that is all gone. That's the original fireplace, and that's sort of how it is today, with a neutral wall and sort of taupe colored woodwork. And this is Miss Juliet's room. That was the original. That mantle was left in the house, and I took it and had it reproduced. So the other 4 mantles were reproduced from that, and that's an upstairs bedroom, and then that's a very tiny little bathroom. So this is what the front of the house looked like when we started. That was the porch. That was the porch, and this is Lou Lemley's brother-in-law. We did a couple weddings for him, and when I was ready to build a porch, he came down and built the porch, and that's Lou's middle son and youngest son. The boys were so sorry when the windows went in, because they would come up there and play paintball, and so when the windows came in, they couldn't do that anymore. And that's some of the things that left the house. This was a great day for me, because that's the first day in 40 years that the house had windows. I ordered these sashes from the Midwest, and this was a little carpenter that had worked on the property, and so I think he put them in about 4 or 5 hours. So the whole house had doors and windows for the first time in however long. So it was a great day. Another great day was when I got water and could wash my hands in hot water and soap and take a shower there. And, the first, that's when, one of the first projects was putting a roof on. So that was renting scaffolding and having the roof put on. The first party I threw at Fountain Hill was for Miss Juliet and Bob Lewis and Bob Lewis's sister. They were like turning 80s and something in the 90s. There was no windows. I had put some floors in the house. And I said, why don't we, I didn't know how long they were going to live. I thought, oh my God, we need to do something for them. So I had them do an invitation to some friends, thinking, oh, they're going to have 20 people. It was probably 90 people. Drove up, and we parked. I put 3 or 4 rectangular tables in the center of the dining room, and there's no water there, there's no electricity there, and I hung a portrait, did flowers, and had food there, and all these people showed up. So, did anyone come to that party? Oh, our mayor of Niota came to it. Do you remember that?
Very clearly. Lewis's were my friends.
Yes. Grace was one of the ladies of Niota. So, did you get an invitation?
I can't remember. I may have.
So anyway, that was the first, and it was a great day, and we survived. And then I moved towards, oh, we're done.
No.
So I moved towards, didn't do too much more entertaining until we had porcelain facilities, you know. It's been an interesting process. It's not always been easy, but I certainly feel honored to be a part of making that happen. I wanted to show you these. These are called graining tools. And at Fountain Hill, since it never left the family, it was never painted over with white woodwork or anything, or another color. So back in the 19th century, they would take a wood, like pine or heart pine or something, and then paint over it with another stain and different graining tools to make it look like a more expensive wood. So Fountain Hill has the original doors, and the staircase and the side paneling and all that is all original. And then when I got my 3 mantles, that I have 2 of those have grains. What's interesting is Lisa Long found a door upstairs that was still left that was grained. We just found the back of a door at the Getty's house. They had put a floor in when, Josh?
1930s, maybe 40s.
They put a new floor down all downstairs. But they left a floor in the closet. And so Josh says, oh, come look, here's the original floor. So he opens the door, and I look on the back of it, and it is grained. So that house was built in 1892. So they were still doing that. And you can see a little piece of the original heart pine underneath it. So it's amazing that they were still doing that in the 1892, and the craftsmen to be able to do that. I wanted to show you some of the silver and crystal. This platter came from the Schultzes. This was probably what they put their ham on every Sunday. Miss Juliet showed me some porcelain that her grandmother had, and it was burgundy banded. This is not it, but I found this and bought it because it was so close to what she had. This is called Vieux Paris, Old Paris. It's not marked on back because they didn't start marking things until Limoges came into vogue. When that happened, then it was marked. But this is all pre-1860 or something like that. So I have numerous pieces of this. This is an 8-piece place setting. And then I have, I've collected what's called wedding band in Old Paris. And it's a gold band in the center. Andrew Jackson used that in the White House when he was there. He didn't get some fancy floor or whatever. But I think he had a lot of people come in and break stuff up, so he probably had to buy cheap Corel then. The silver were the Schultzes. This is a cake knife, I think. This was their pattern, and Miss Julia actually gave me a few pieces of this. And so this is 1860 or so, this silver. And then there's another pattern, and this is another pattern of the medallion. I think this is called Roman medallion. So of course when I got a couple of pieces, I decided, I think and then I have a business partner who's a collectaholic, and he's on eBay all the time. So anyway, so I have quite a collection of both these. What time is it? Do you want me to stop talking? Okay.
Well said.
All right, let's open it up to questions. Is there anything that I can answer? Comments?
Keith, when the new windows were going in the big day,
Yes.
it looked like I don't know what you call it, sash,
Yes.
whatever, around it was the older. Were you able to maintain the?
Yes. Let's go back. Whoops. So this, yes, I saved all that, and I guess that's called the sash. Is this called what? Is that the sash? Talk to me. Who knows?
That's the sash,
This is the sash.
yes,
And what is this called?
framework.
The framework. I had all the framework, and it was contained and the sash fit in it.
I wonder why was it cypress or, I mean, I'm surprised it stayed viable. I don't know if viable.
I think so.
is the right
I mean,
word
it was a
either.
pretty hard wood. There's a few pieces that I've had to sort of replace or put, filling in or something. But as a whole, it's contained.
Most likely heart pine.
There you go.
And one more thing, because I've been lucky enough to be inside this beautiful home one time. Would you go back to the foyer, because you did the most interesting thing in the foyer when you're
Okay.
talking about how to make things look good, without. Would you explain to people about that wallpaper?
Yes, yes. In the middle of the 19th century, as we were talking, they would take surfaces to make it look more expensive than it really was. So I decided, which I didn't create this happened, but anyway, by numerous other people. I took blocks, I cut blocks of wallpaper that looked like marble, left an area for grounding, and glued it on the wall. So when you walk into the foyer, it looks like it's marble walls, but they're not. It's just wallpaper glued on there. So it sort of gives that impression of being marble. And then they also would do baseboards where they would paint to make it look like marble and things. I mean, because they couldn't get that surface or couldn't afford it, they would take it and recreate it by painting it or graining it or doing things like that.
Did you have to do much masonry work?
Where the dining room was, I put siding there. It had a cement block that had been put in. When I bought it, the house, the dining room had 1960s aluminum broken out windows. So of course I ripped those out immediately. But so that was put over with siding. But I did have the whole house, mudded, where they went through. I had them going through and pointed. Yes, there's the name. And had it pointed where I had them go through and point them. Going the wrong way again. So this was all pointed. The front of the house is much stronger than the back. The back is still a little shaky. I think it always will be. We just sort of push it up and keep it. Because I don't know how long we're going to be able to keep it up. So anyway, without starting over.
How many fireplaces were in the house?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay, wow.
And I've never fixed them where they can burn. I've always been afraid that something would catch feather, even though they talked about having flues and all that. So, Paul?
Keith, thank you for the great program in restoring this beautiful house. And I know my mother wants to ask you how much you spent on it, but I don't but if you would tell us, have you got anything left you really want to do to the house?
Oh yeah, it would be nice to have central heat and air. It would be nice to have, I have a decent kitchen. I took what was called the pantry and made it a modern kitchen. The bathrooms are shoddy, but there would have to be a bigger imprint made to do that. So the next people that get to do all that. So anyway, I mean, and we're just temporary caretakers. I mean, all of us who have old homes, that we love, it's just for right now. I'm just a temporary caretaker. I tried to do everything I could to make it to romance it. I built a big brick entrance, and my friend Larry Tillman gave me a beautiful marble plaque that says Fountain Hill 1820. I put the wooden fence around it. I cut the trees down out the driveway, you know. So, you know, and lots of people don't know about Fountain Hill because you can't see it from the road. I mean, I say, oh, I'm at Fountain Hill. Where is that? I mean, even Niotans, unless you have been there, you don't know that it sits there because it's, when you drive by it, you don't see the house at all. There's a tree line. So, go ahead, Ann.
I was late getting in here. Keith, you may have told them about the story about the cornerstone.
I did.
Did you? Okay.
Yes. And then the front and terrace, I wanted to sort of create a garden. So I have eight statues there of life size of the Four Seasons with boxwoods and circular, and drug some steps off the front porch and drug it down there. So I've enhanced that area. I have a boxwood garden to this side of the house, a little boxwood garden, another garden here. I've just tried to do things that when it goes to someone else, it will be embellished and will be appreciated, and that, you know, won't be just like, oh, well, let's tear this down, you know. So, because I think if I had not gotten this, it would have been gone. There were so many vandals. I had vandals for 3 or 4 years who would break in after I owned it, after I lived there. Let me tell you one story. So there were these kids, I guess from the high school or whatever, who kept breaking in. I mean, I would go to church or I'd go to work and come home and they had busted in the French door or the front door. Just take a brick. So, fine. So it was the week that we had 2 policemen who had sort of roughed up someone, and the mayor had to let them go that week. So that's the week that these people are breaking in my house. And so, you know, we called the sheriff's department. They came some and all that. But anyway, so I said to Lou, I said, well, we're going to start. We'll go and sit in the house, park our vehicles away from it, and let these people come. So one Monday afternoon, these 3 boys come up on their bicycles, come down the driveway. I left the blue room door open, and we're upstairs. I'm on one side, Lou's on the other side. And they come in the house. And the one boy says, look for the silver. And so Lou and I, in the meantime, I'm calling the sheriff's department. They were headed this way. Well, they thought it was Halfburn down the road, so they passed. I said, you just passed us. Come back. So Lou went down and piled up their bicycles. In the meantime, the youngest one comes upstairs, and Lou was in the other bedroom. Lou slams the door, scares the boy. I mean, he's like 15 or something. So I thought, well, what am I going to do here? So I was in my bedroom, and I keep a reproduction flintlock pistol that I used during the, reenactment. It didn't have a flint, it didn't have any powder, it didn't have a ball. But I just picked that up and walked into the room and said to that kid, sit down. So he sat down, and just was like this. So then there was another one comes up the steps, and as I met him, as he came by, I said, come in here and sit down. And finally, Lou went and got the oldest one, the ringleader, got him up there. And so I'm holding these 3 with a blank pistol that wouldn't fire, that was resting on. So anyway, in the meantime, we finally heard the sheriffs come. And the oldest one says to me, he says, Mister, are you related to all these people and these portraits in this house? And I'm like, son, you need to be worried about going to jail instead of my stuff. And so we went to court. We were in the paper the next day. Oh, they catch the thieves and all that sort of thing. So we went to court, and the judge says, is there anything you want to say? And I said, well, I just want to say I appreciate the boys not burning the house down, because anything could have happened when they were in there, and they're messing with our history and our preservation. So I was glad that didn't happen. I said, It just, they had no business being there, because obviously they didn't care about the house or the things in it. So, yes, Mr. Pruitt.
You said you bought the house and of course the lot on it and everything. How much more land do you own there about?
I own 8.5, and then Dyco bought 8 acres when the property was sold. And they keep those 2 fields mowed, and it's beside the house. I think they bought it as a buffer to sort of protect, them and give them a little, they didn't want anyone building near them.
Did you get the barn and the chicken coop and the?
Yes, I got all that, yes. The smokehouse is still stapled. The log house was almost gone when I got it. I just haven't had, I just can't burn it up or tear it down or whatever. So it's just crumbling in front of me. Anyway, but the smokehouse is there, the dog truck barn is there, and the chicken coop is sort of leaning.
That's so cool.
Any other questions?
Keith,
Yes.
the original house, did it have a separate kitchen building away from the house?
I think they used the log house. I think the Hills built a log house, which is, from here to the entrance here. And I think they probably used that in their summer and cooked out there in the summer, and then they would cook in the winter in the house, in that fireplace.
Isn't that kind of unusual for that era? Didn't they always have a separate kitchen? Or maybe in other parts of the country, that was the way they were built, but.
Right. In the South, yeah, they talked about that, but that's the hearth. That's the primitive kitchen there.
Okay.
And then this wall has a window here, and then in this corner where this all was, I went up into the attic, and there was an opening where another staircase was. See, the keeping room and the primitive kitchen, I didn't get a picture, I'm sorry. You come into the keeping room, and there's 3 little steps, and then there's a door, a wooden door, and then it has tiny little steps that go upstairs to the attic. So when I bought the house, that other staircase was totally gone in this kitchen. But I went upstairs and saw that opening was still there. They had the part of the railing, they had a door that lifted up, and realized that probably matched it. So I just had them reproduce that in the primitive kitchen. Any other questions?
A million thank yous.
Here, here.